My name is Hailey Scott. I'm 27 years old, and this is the story of how the man I loved the most shattered me at my most vulnerable. And how I turned that heartbreak into the greatest revenge of his life. 5 years ago, I was a 22-year-old graphic design student hustling for freelance gigs while juggling late-night shifts at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago. I was broke, exhausted, and living off black coffee and broken sleep. But I had dreams, big ones. I believed that if I worked hard enough, I'd make it. That belief carried me through some of the toughest days of my life. And then I met Ryan Matthews. He was 28, tall, perfectly dressed, and everything I never thought I'd deserve. We met at a charity fundraiser hosted by one of my freelance clients. I was working the event, managing the media wall, taking pictures, and fixing logos on last-minute presentations. I was invisible to most of the rich attendees. But not to him. He saw me. Not just glanced. He saw me. "Is this your design?" he asked, pointing to a digital display I'd thrown together in less than 3 hours. I nodded, nervously brushing hair behind my ear. He smiled. "It's the cleanest thing in this entire building." That night, he didn't leave my side. A week later, we had our first date at a rooftop restaurant I couldn't pronounce. 2 months later, he flew me to Santorini just because I mentioned I'd never seen the ocean. And within a year, we were married. Ryan Matthews was more than a millionaire tech entrepreneur. He was a genius, the founder of a cybersecurity company that was dominating headlines. People admired him. Women envied me. I lived in a modern mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors that echoed like cathedrals, and a closet that could have housed a small family. But the truth? I would have been just as happy with him in a tiny studio apartment with peeling paint and broken dreams, because I loved him. I really, really loved him. We tried to have a baby almost 2 years into our marriage. I wanted to build a family. A life. A legacy that wasn't made of marble and money, but of bedtime stories and scraped knees. But life didn't make it easy. I lost my first baby at 10 weeks. And my second just shy of 12. Each loss was a stab to my soul. I remember Ryan holding me in bed after the second miscarriage, whispering, "Maybe it's not meant to be yet. Maybe it's the universe saving our baby for the right time." I believed him. I always did. And then, finally, after months of fertility treatments, tears, and prayers whispered to the ceiling at 3 a.m., it happened. I was pregnant. Healthy. Stable. Glowing. The baby was strong. The heartbeat was steady. The doctor smiled. And for the first time in years, so did I. We announced it at a grand brunch in our backyard, white balloons, pink lemonade, and gold cupcakes. Friends clapped. His family cheered. I remember him placing his hand on my belly during the toast and saying, "This baby is the best thing that's ever happened to us." That was Sunday. On Friday, I found an envelope slid under the front door. No courier. No knock. No note. I bent down, thinking it was some delayed hospital paperwork or baby mailer. But my name was typed on the front, cold, sharp, emotionless. Inside were divorce papers. Divorce. Filed by Ryan Matthews. I stood there in our polished marble hallway, the very place we'd slow danced barefoot just weeks ago, reading the words like they were written in fire. My vision blurred. My knees gave out. I sat on the floor, cradling the growing curve of my belly, heart pounding harder than it ever had. There was no message. No explanation. Just the facts. Ryan Matthews was divorcing his 7 months pregnant wife. I called him. No answer. I texted. Blocked. I emailed. Returned. It was like he vanished, like everything we built was a mirage, and I had been living inside a beautiful lie. That night, I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I curled up in bed surrounded by photos of us, wedding pictures, vacation shots, baby ultrasound prints, trying to find a clue, a sign, anything. But there was nothing. He planned this. He waited until I was at my weakest. Until I couldn't work. Until I was too pregnant to fight. He wanted to break me. But the next morning, I didn't cry. I stood up. I looked in the mirror. And I saw a different woman staring back at me. Not the soft-hearted dreamer Ryan left behind. No. This woman was a storm. If Ryan Matthews thought he could destroy me and walk away smiling, he had no idea what I was capable of. I called my lawyer. I called my best friend. I made a plan. Because I was no longer just Hailey Scott, his wife. I was Hailey Scott, a mother-to-be, a woman scorned, and a storm coming to drown everything he built. He sent me divorce papers while I carried his child. Now, I will send him bankruptcy papers while he sleeps. The morning after I found the divorce papers, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. My eyes were swollen from crying, my hair was a mess, and my lips were dry and cracked. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. She wasn't the same Hailey who used to dance barefoot in that marble kitchen, humming along to whatever song Ryan played while making coffee. She wasn't the wife who used to believe that love was stronger than lies. No, this woman was someone else, tired, bruised, but not broken. I looked at her and whispered, "We're not going to let him win." I called Olivia Grayson first. She was a friend of a friend, a divorce attorney with a reputation for being ruthless in court. I told her everything, every ugly detail. She listened without interrupting, and when I finally finished, she exhaled slowly and said, "You're not just dealing with a divorce, Hailey. You're dealing with a man who's been planning to erase you." That stuck with me. Erase me. As if I were nothing more than a chapter he could rip out of his story. I needed more than legal help. I needed information. Answers. So I reached out to Jordan Reyes, a friend from college who now worked in cybersecurity. We hadn't spoken in almost a year, not since I got too busy playing the perfect wife in Ryan's perfect world. I met Jordan at a quiet coffee shop in River North, wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf to hide my face. I told him everything too, and when I asked if he could help me look into Ryan's finances, he didn't even hesitate. He opened his laptop right there and started typing. "If he's hiding something," he said, "I'll find it." What Jordan uncovered in just a few days was worse than anything I had imagined. Ryan had created a holding company called Mavericks Holdings, completely unknown to me, and had been quietly moving money out of our joint accounts into it. Thousands, then tens of thousands, then more. Some transfers even had forged e-signatures that looked exactly like mine. He used my old ID scans, probably taken from our mortgage paperwork or my medical files, to authorize things I never agreed to. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud. But it didn't stop there. Olivia hired a private investigator to track Ryan's recent movements. Within a week, I had photos. There he was, smiling, holding hands with a blonde in Aspen, then later kissing her on a yacht in Monaco. Her name was Tiffany Blake. 26, yoga instructor, no real income, and somehow she was wearing a Cartier bracelet that looked suspiciously like the one Ryan once told me he couldn't afford. The worst part wasn't that he was cheating. It was that he was parading it, like I had already been deleted. Like I never existed. And this woman, she was standing exactly where I used to stand. Next to him. Laughing. Wearing my jewelry. Taking my place. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. Not yet. That would have been too easy, too impulsive. No, I decided I would wait. Because the longer I stayed quiet, the more careless he would become. Ryan always believed he was smarter than everyone else. He had no idea I was watching his every move now. No idea I was documenting every bank transfer, every lie, every violation of the law. No idea I was about to turn the life he built into dust. At night, I'd lie on my side with one hand on my stomach, feeling the soft kicks of the baby growing inside me. That child gave me strength I didn't know I had. When I was tempted to scream or cry or send him a long, furious message, I reminded myself of the bigger picture. My child deserved a future free from this toxic shadow. And I would give them that. I would make sure they never needed to know how cruel their father really was. I opened a notebook and started writing everything down: dates, names, companies, amounts. Every dirty secret Ryan thought he'd buried was now part of a plan. A slow, careful, quiet plan. I didn't want revenge in the form of yelling or slashing tires or dramatic confrontations. I wanted something colder. Smarter. Permanent. He thought he had outplayed me. He thought I was weak because I was carrying his child. He thought I would disappear quietly into motherhood while he lived his golden new life with a shiny new woman. But I was still here. Still breathing. Still thinking. And soon, I would be the one holding the pen. Because if Ryan Matthews wanted war, he should have remembered one thing. You don't leave a woman like me with nothing and expect her not to come back for everything. My nights were the quietest part of my day. The world outside my window would sleep, but my mind wouldn't. While most people rested, I was building. I would lie in bed, one hand resting on my belly, the other scrolling through documents, bank transfers, and digital trails Ryan never thought I'd uncover. I had become obsessed, not just with revenge, but with understanding the man I once loved. I had spent 5 years thinking he was my safe place. I never once considered he could be the storm. But now, when I looked back at the subtle red flags, the late nights, the mysterious business trips, the way he stopped looking at me like he used to, I realized they weren't just cracks. They were signs of a structure built to collapse. Ryan had built a false exit. One where he would slide out of our marriage with all the money, a new girlfriend, and his spotless reputation intact. He thought I'd be too broken, too hormonal, too tired to fight back. He wanted me out of the picture, probably somewhere far away with a child he wouldn't visit, while he started his perfect new life with a perfect new woman. But I was no longer the woman he married. I spent my days preparing quietly. I moved into a small apartment in Lincoln Park under a different name, just in case he had eyes on me. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and my baby. I sold my designer clothes online, the ones he insisted on buying for me but hated when I wore in public. I let go of anything that reminded me of him. Every thread, every photo, every fake memory. I needed to start over, not just physically, but mentally. My lawyer Olivia was relentless. She uncovered 5 properties Ryan had secretly purchased in the past year. All in cash. All in the name of a holding company that had my forged signature. And guess what? 3 of them were already listed for resale, with offers. He wasn't just trying to hide money. He was laundering it. I didn't report it yet. I wanted him to go deeper, to believe he was still ahead. The more he moved, the more he exposed. Ryan always thought he was the smartest man in the room. But arrogance is a wonderful thing when you're planning to use it against someone. And then came the moment that almost broke me. I found a voice message. It was buried in a cloud backup I hadn't checked in months. It was from Ryan. Sent 5 weeks ago. Before the divorce papers. He was talking to someone. Not me. A woman. Laughing. She has no idea. Once the paperwork's filed, I'll just tell her it's for the best. She's too emotional to raise a kid anyway. Silence. Then the woman's voice, smooth and careless. So she's keeping it. Yeah, he replied. But don't worry. I'll handle it. Once the kid's here, I'll file for custody. Courts don't favor unstable mothers. I froze. The air left my lungs. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to take my baby. He wanted to paint me as unstable, emotional, too fragile to raise my own child. He was preparing to build a case against me. And that meant everything he'd done, the silence, the coldness, the divorce while I was pregnant, wasn't impulsive. It was calculated. Strategic. Evil. I replayed the message until I couldn't hear it anymore. And then I cried. Not for him. Not even for me. But for the innocent life inside me, already being used as a pawn. That night, I made another promise. If Ryan wanted to play dirty, I'd show him what it looked like when a woman fought back with everything she had. Not screaming. Not crying. But patient. Brilliant. Quiet. I wasn't going to stop him from taking the next step in his plan. I was going to wait for him at the bottom of the stairs he was about to fall down. And when he hit the floor, I'd be the one watching. With my baby in my arms. And his world in pieces. The days after the financial freeze were quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that feels like the stillness before a storm. I knew Ryan would react. Men like him always do, when their money is touched, when their control is challenged. It was only a matter of time. I waited. I stayed off social media. I turned off location services. I changed every password I had and got a new phone number that only Olivia, Jordan, and 2 close friends had. I wasn't hiding, I was preparing. The woman he thought he could control was gone. This version of me was calculating, patient, and deliberate. I wasn't going to throw punches. I was going to press pressure points. Then it happened. Ryan sent a message. It was short. Cold. Typical. We need to talk. That's it. No apology. No explanation. No, how are you? Not even a mention of the child I was carrying. For a moment, I stared at the screen, wondering if this was the man I once believed I would grow old with. Was it always this easy for him? To discard, to replace, to erase. Did he ever love me at all? Or had I just been the convenient accessory for the version of his life he was building? I didn't reply. I left him on read. Let him feel the silence he so easily forced on me. Instead, I focused on what mattered. Myself. My baby. And the blueprint I was building to take back control of my life, and his. Jordan was now working full-time on Ryan's digital history. I paid him with money Ryan didn't know I still had, cash I'd squirreled away from my old freelance work, saved silently in a forgotten bank account that Ryan never had access to. One of the few things I kept just for myself. Jordan found more than I expected. Not just fraudulent transfers or hidden assets, but emails. Hundreds of them. Correspondence between Ryan and his lawyer months before the divorce. Planning. Drafting custody arguments. Predicting what I might do, what I might say. There were emails about my mental health after my miscarriages, how I'd had anxiety and sleep issues, how I'd cried for days and blamed myself. Things I told him in the dark, in trust. He twisted those moments into ammunition. He was planning to make me look unstable. He wanted to make me look unfit. He wanted to take my baby. When I read those emails, something inside me snapped. It was like a string had been holding me together this whole time, thin, frayed, but still intact, and with those words, it finally broke. The tears didn't come this time. Just stillness. Cold, focused stillness. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about punishment. This had become war. I scheduled a private meeting with Olivia and a family law specialist. We mapped out a counter-strategy, step by step. I documented every medical appointment I'd attended. Every vitamin I'd taken. Every therapy session I'd participated in after my losses. We gathered letters from doctors, from friends, even from a prenatal therapist who wrote a glowing report on my commitment to the pregnancy. Every piece of proof that I was stable. Strong. Loving. Capable. Meanwhile, Olivia filed for a temporary restraining order on Ryan's attempt to liquidate assets tied to our marriage. We were putting a legal leash around his empire. Slowly, but tightly. And while that unfolded, I made another move, one I hadn't told anyone about, not even Olivia. I hired a PR consultant. Her name was Lila Grant. Mid-30s. Tough as nails. She'd worked on political campaigns and corporate crisis cleanups. I told her everything. I showed her the photos of Ryan with Tiffany. The emails. The financial evidence. The voice recording. She looked at me for a long moment when I finished speaking. "You want me to go public with this?" "No," I said calmly. "Not yet." "Then what do you want?" I looked her in the eye. "I want him to know that if he comes for me, or my child, I will destroy everything he's built. I want him to see the edge of the cliff, and know I'm the one who brought him there." She nodded. "Say no more." With Lila's help, we crafted a full media dossier. Every detail carefully laid out, cross-checked, and time-stamped. It was never meant to be used, only shown. A shadow hanging over Ryan's reputation like a thundercloud. If he tried to take my child, I would show this dossier to every reporter in the city. But for now, I waited. I went to prenatal yoga. I organized the nursery. I sipped herbal tea and painted my nails and played soft music for the baby. On the outside, I was just another woman preparing to be a mother. On the inside, I was preparing for war. I kept my phone on, just in case Ryan decided to call. But he didn't. Not directly. He had his lawyer contact Olivia again. This time with a request for a settlement meeting. He wanted to talk things through. Of course he did. His accounts were frozen. His assets were trapped. And I had the receipts. Still, I agreed. Because sometimes, the best place to strike is from across the negotiation table. Let him sit in front of me. Let him look into the eyes of the woman he thought he could destroy. Let him see how wrong he was. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon at a neutral legal office downtown, glass walls, white furniture, and that unsettling silence that only comes when too much is about to be said. Olivia walked beside me, calm and unreadable as always. I was 32 weeks pregnant by then. My belly showed beneath a sleek black dress, and my steps were slower than usual, but every movement was deliberate. Controlled. Composed. I wasn't going there as the crying wife. I was going as the woman he underestimated. We entered the room first. Ryan was late, of course. He always liked to make an entrance, even if no one cared anymore. I stood near the window for a few minutes, watching the city move beneath me, cars, people, lives. I wondered how many of them were living double lives like Ryan. How many women in that very moment were being betrayed, blindsided, rewritten out of their own stories. Then the door opened. He walked in with his attorney and a smug half-smile like he was strolling into a boardroom he thought he owned. But I saw it. The flicker. The moment his eyes landed on me and widened slightly, just enough for me to know I'd caught him off guard. I didn't look broken. I didn't look angry. I looked calm. And that terrified him more than any scream ever could. We sat down across from each other, a wide table between us, covered in papers. I didn't say a word. I didn't even look directly at him for the first few minutes. I let Olivia speak. She outlined our position, our concerns, and the request to divide marital assets fairly, given that Ryan had already removed millions without my consent. She spoke of forged signatures, misrepresentation, infidelity, and emotional abandonment during a high-risk pregnancy. Ryan's lawyer tried to cut in, to talk about emotion clouding judgment. But Olivia was ready. She pulled out medical reports. Proof of my mental fitness. Proof of his disappearance. Evidence that I'd sought therapy, attended every prenatal appointment, and maintained stability throughout the entire process. She placed them on the table with the grace of a surgeon, cutting his narrative open in front of him. Then it was Ryan's turn. He cleared his throat and leaned forward, lacing his fingers together like he used to when trying to charm investors. Hailey, he began, using that same soft tone he'd always used when he was about to manipulate me, I never wanted things to get ugly. I looked up at him then, finally meeting his eyes. He looked tired. Not in the way I was, carrying life, building strength, but tired from losing control. His jaw was tense, his eyes darker than I remembered. He wore a watch worth more than the car I'd sold 2 months ago. And still, he looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. You left me, I said, my voice steady. You sent divorce papers without a single conversation. You abandoned your child before they were even born. And you're sitting here pretending to be reasonable? He flinched. Barely. But I saw it. I wasn't trying to hurt you, he replied. Things between us, they weren't working. You mean the part where I supported your career, gave up mine, carried your child while you planned to strip me of everything I have? That part wasn't working for you. His lawyer shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting this version of me. Ryan glanced at Olivia, then at me again. Let's just settle this, Hailey. I'll give you a fair number. A clean break. You get your space. I get mine. We don't need to drag this through the mud. I leaned forward, finally letting him see what I'd become. There's no clean break, I said. You forged my signature. You stole money. You cheated. You made plans to take my baby. And now you want a clean break. Ryan opened his mouth, but I wasn't done. I know about Tiffany. I know about the properties. I know about the voice memo you forgot was synced to your cloud. I know about everything, Ryan. Every lie. Every secret. And I've kept my mouth shut because I wanted to see how far you'd fall before you realized I was never the one losing. He stared at me. Pale now. The confidence slipping, layer by layer. You're bluffing, he muttered. I smiled. Olivia placed a single folder on the table and slid it to his attorney. That's a copy of what we have. The original is in secure custody with a press release ready to go. If your client insists on pushing this to court, we'll not only win custody, we'll destroy his reputation. And we'll do it legally, publicly, and permanently. The room was quiet. I could hear the distant hum of the city through the window. Ryan looked at the folder, then at me. You've changed, he said softly. I shook my head. No, Ryan. I've woken up. He didn't say another word. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the table. The meeting ended 20 minutes later with his lawyer promising to revisit the numbers and consult the client before making any further offers. As Olivia and I left the room, I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. But I felt powerful. For the first time in months, I felt like I had my name back. My voice. My worth. And as I stepped into the elevator, I placed my hand on my belly and whispered, "He's not going to take anything from us ever again." Because the war was still on. But the ground had shifted. And I was no longer playing defense. The night after the meeting, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the lights off, staring at the ceiling, my hand resting on the swell of my stomach. My baby was calm that night, no kicks, no movement, almost like they were resting too, sensing that something had shifted. I had looked Ryan in the eyes and watched the mask fall. I had seen him sweat. I had watched his lawyer stammer when Olivia dropped the truth on the table. But somehow, I knew it wasn't over. Ryan wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily. Especially when it came to things he thought belonged to him. 2 days later, it started. It was subtle at first, comments online, vague rumors on small tech blogs. Then, whispers about me on forums connected to his company. Nothing with my name on it, of course, but clear enough for those who knew us. Words like unstable, manipulative, money chaser. Stories painting me as the gold-digging wife who trapped a rich man with a baby she was weaponizing. The smear campaign had begun. I knew it was him. I knew it was calculated. He was trying to build a narrative, one he could fall back on if the divorce got ugly, if custody became a war. He wanted to poison the water before I ever stepped in the courtroom. But I was ready. I contacted Lila, my PR strategist, and showed her the growing trail. She didn't even flinch. Classic. He's testing the waters. Trying to see if he can control the narrative before it gets to the press. We'll handle it. She didn't just handle it, she countered it. We planted quiet stories of our own. Not lies, just carefully crafted truths. About the business I was building again. About the charity design work I was doing for an inner-city art school. About the woman left behind while her tech mogul husband flew around the world with his assistant. We never said his name. We didn't have to. The right people knew. Meanwhile, Olivia filed for exclusive temporary custody until the baby was born, citing abandonment, emotional distress, and financial manipulation. Ryan's team tried to fight it, but the evidence was too strong. He was legally barred from contacting me directly or interfering with my medical care. He could attend court-approved appointments, but only if I allowed it. I didn't. He hadn't been there when I cried during the ultrasounds. When I bled a little and thought I was losing the baby. When I woke up with leg cramps so sharp they made me scream. He had missed all of that. By choice. He didn't get to play father now because it suited his narrative. But something else happened that week, something I didn't expect. Tiffany messaged me. It came from a burner account. No name. Just a short, cruel message. He told me you were crazy. You're just mad he found someone better. I stared at it for a long time, my fingers twitching to respond. But I didn't. Not because I was afraid, but because it confirmed everything I needed to know. He wasn't just trying to win. He was poisoning her too. He was probably feeding her the same lies he once fed me. Whispering that I was hysterical. That I couldn't handle motherhood. That I was dragging him down. I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered the necklace. The bracelet. The trip to Maldives while I was in the ER with pregnancy complications. She wasn't just a bystander. She was part of the betrayal. And she was going to fall with him. I started building something behind the scenes, something quiet, personal, mine. I launched a design studio. Nothing flashy. Just me and a few trusted contacts from before I married Ryan. I called it Ash and Light. Because I was rising from the ashes. Because there was still light in me, despite everything. Clients started coming in. Women-owned businesses. Nonprofits. Survivors of bad marriages. I didn't share my story, but somehow, they knew. And they trusted me. It felt good to create again. To earn again. To be me again. Meanwhile, Ryan's company was stumbling. A former employee leaked documents showing financial discrepancies. Investors started asking questions. A lawsuit popped up, one I had nothing to do with, but I watched it like a spectator at a show I had front row tickets to. His name was being tarnished slowly, just as he had tried to tarnish mine. And yet, through all of it, I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Because I wasn't done. I was still pregnant. Still waiting. Still preparing for the moment I'd face him again, not in a negotiation room, but in court. I had one goal left: protect my baby. Make sure he never had the power to use them like he used me. And to do that, I had to be 10 steps ahead. Always. So I waited. I built. I documented everything. Because the next time Ryan Matthews made a move, I would be ready. And this time, I wouldn't just hit back. I would take everything. My due date was 3 weeks away, and I could feel everything tightening, my body, the walls around me, the grip Ryan had tried to keep on my life. It was all unraveling now. The press had begun to speculate about his behavior. That lawsuit against his company. It snowballed. An exposé came out in a tech journal, questioning his ethics, his spending, and his personal life. They didn't mention me directly, but the phrases "scandal during ongoing divorce" and "abandonment of pregnant wife" were there, in print, in ink, impossible to take back. Ryan didn't like that. He tried calling me again. This time, he left a voicemail. "Hailey," his voice cracked, too forced to sound sincere, "we don't have to do this in court. Let's talk. I made mistakes, but I don't want to be your enemy." I listened to it twice. Not because I was touched, but because I wanted to hear the panic in his voice again. He knew he was losing. And I was only just getting started. I forwarded the voicemail to Olivia. She said not to respond. Not yet. The judge was reviewing our full custody filing. The more Ryan tried to worm his way back in without accountability, the more he helped us. The strange thing was, I didn't feel like the same woman anymore. There were moments I'd forget what it felt like to be her, the version of Hailey who used to wait by the window for him to come home. Who used to wear his favorite perfume hoping he'd notice. Who tiptoed around his moods like she was walking across glass. That Hailey was gone. She didn't die. She evolved. And now, I was preparing for labor, alone. No co-parent. No partner. No fake comfort. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt solid. As if something had clicked into place inside me. Something bigger than pain, or betrayal, or even revenge. Strength. Not the kind you post about on social media. Not the kind people cheer for in movies. But the quiet, relentless kind that shows up at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep and the baby won't stop kicking and the world feels like it's folding in on itself. I went to my final ultrasound appointment. Alone, as usual. The technician smiled gently at me when the image appeared on the screen. There it was, my baby's face, soft and real. I almost cried. But instead, I laughed. A sharp, emotional laugh that surprised even me. "Looks like she's smiling," the nurse said. I blinked. "She?" The nurse paused. "Oh, no one told you. You're having a girl." I stared at the screen. A girl. A daughter. My eyes filled with tears, but this time they were warm, steady. Not broken. I left the clinic with a fire I hadn't felt in months. I knew now exactly what I was fighting for. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about raising a girl who would never feel what I felt, who would never be silenced, gaslit, discarded. My daughter would grow up knowing the truth. Not the messy version, but the powerful one. She'd know her mother didn't stay quiet. She'd know her mother didn't collapse. She'd know that her father tried to erase her mother, and her mother wrote herself back in, one page at a time. When I got home that day, there was a package waiting on the front steps. No return address. I opened it slowly. Inside was a box. And inside the box was the necklace. The Cartier diamond necklace. The one Ryan gave me on our second anniversary. The one Tiffany had been wearing in those photos from Paris. I stared at it for a long time, confused at first. Then I saw the note. It was handwritten. Sloppy. I didn't know. I'm sorry. No signature. But I knew who sent it. Tiffany. So she was starting to see through him too. It didn't change anything. It didn't make her innocent. But it told me something else. His perfect fantasy life was starting to crack. The image he built with her, the lies he told her, they were unraveling. He was losing everything. Not because I fought dirty, but because I fought smart. The legal battle wasn't over. The judge was still reviewing our petition. The final hearing was coming up, and I would face Ryan one more time, this time not in a meeting room, but in court. In front of a judge. In front of facts, and law, and the truth. And when that moment came, I wouldn't ask for mercy. I'd ask for justice. And I would get it. For me. For the woman I used to be. And for the daughter who was about to be born. The day of the court hearing arrived with gray skies and a sharp chill in the air. It wasn't raining, but it felt like it might at any second, as if the sky was holding its breath, just like I was. I wore a soft cream blouse that stretched gently over my pregnant belly and a dark, fitted blazer that made me feel like I wasn't walking into a courtroom, but into battle. 35 weeks. That's how far along I was. I'd never imagined I'd be fighting for custody before my child was even born. But here I was. And I was ready. When I arrived, Olivia was already waiting, standing with her arms crossed and her expression unreadable. We didn't speak at first. She simply placed a hand on my back, gave me a gentle look, and nodded toward the courtroom doors. Inside, the air was thick. Formal. Still. Ryan was already there. He sat at the table with his lawyer, dressed in a dark tailored suit. He looked the part, handsome, polished, professional. But underneath it, he looked thinner. His jaw was clenched. His eyes darted toward me the moment I stepped in, and for the briefest second, I saw it again, that flicker of panic behind the cool facade. He didn't think I'd make it this far. He didn't think I'd still be standing. The hearing wasn't long. It didn't need to be. Olivia presented everything. Calm. Precise. She laid it all out in the same tone you'd use to read a weather report, controlled and factual, yet impossible to ignore. Abandonment during a high-risk pregnancy. Documented forgery of financial records. The voice memo. The smear campaign. The prenatal therapy letters. My medical history, showing consistency, emotional stability, and the absence of any condition that could be used against me. And then, she did something I didn't expect. She asked me to speak. Just for a moment. I stood, placing my hand gently under my stomach, and walked to the front. The judge looked at me kindly, like someone who saw far too many lies in this room and could sense, even before I spoke, that I wasn't bringing one. My name is Hailey Scott, I said. And I never wanted to be here like this. I wanted to build a family. I wanted a marriage, a partnership, a child who would grow up loved by both parents. I paused. My voice didn't shake, but I felt my hands trembling slightly. But I was left alone. In the middle of my pregnancy. With no explanation. No support. Just silence and betrayal. I didn't run to court immediately. I didn't run to the media. I stayed quiet. I built my case. I gave him time to step up. I looked at Ryan then. He didn't meet my eyes. And he didn't. He only stepped in when I protected myself. He only fought when he realized he couldn't control the outcome. And now, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to protect my daughter from growing up thinking love means abandonment. That money means power. That silence means survival. I turned back to the judge. I'm here to ask for what's fair. Not because I want to punish him, but because I want to raise my child in peace. In stability. In truth. Silence followed. For a long time. Then Ryan's lawyer stood. She tried, desperately, to reframe the story. Ryan wasn't upset, he was confused. He didn't abandon me, he needed space. He didn't know how to handle a surprise pregnancy, he panicked. He loved his unborn child. He was just overwhelmed. It was a performance. And it wasn't enough. After a short recess, the judge returned. And gave his ruling. Temporary sole custody granted to me. No unsupervised visitation until after the birth. No contact unless approved by the court. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just let the words sink into my bones. Words that gave me the one thing I had fought for all these months. Control. Security. Peace. Ryan didn't say a word. Not to me. Not to the judge. His lips were pressed in a hard line, his fingers clenched into fists beneath the table. He stood too quickly, his chair scraping the floor as he followed his lawyer out like a storm on legs. Olivia exhaled next to me. You did it, she said quietly. No, I whispered. I started it. Because it wasn't over. Not yet. The baby hadn't been born. The divorce wasn't finalized. And Ryan Matthews hadn't truly felt the weight of everything he'd done. But the foundation was laid. And when my daughter arrived, I wouldn't just be a mother. I'd be her shield. And one day, I'd tell her the story of how she was born from a war, and how her mother won it with nothing but the truth, a spine of steel, and the love that no man could ever take away. The hospital room was quiet the night my daughter came into the world. No dramatic screaming. No chaos. Just steady breathing, the soft hum of machines, and the occasional murmur of nurses checking monitors. I had labored for 17 hours. Alone. Olivia had offered to be there. So had my sister, a few close friends. But I said no. I wanted to meet my daughter in silence. In strength. I wanted the first face she saw to be one that chose her, not one that abandoned her. When she was born, they placed her on my chest. And everything I had carried, rage, heartbreak, revenge, melted away in that instant. All I felt was the soft, warm weight of her against me. Her tiny fingers curled, her mouth searching for mine, her body fitting into mine like it had never been anywhere else. She was perfect. 10 fingers. 10 toes. And eyes that blinked up at me with a sleepy frown like she was already trying to figure out the world. I named her Aurora Grace Scott. Aurora, because she was my dawn after a long, dark night. Grace, because no matter how much fire I walked through, I wanted her to grow with softness in her soul. I held her that entire night. I didn't sleep. I barely moved. Nurses came and went. Friends texted. Olivia called to congratulate me. But nothing mattered outside that room. It was just us. Me and Aurora. The beginning of everything. 3 days later, I was discharged. I walked out of that hospital slower, heavier, but with a presence I hadn't felt in months. I was no longer fighting for myself. I was fighting for her. And I was done playing defense. I went home to my new apartment, small but bright, filled with flowers and soft baby blankets and the scent of lavender. Her crib sat next to my bed. Her clothes were folded in neat little drawers. There was a photo of us already framed near the window, me holding her in the hospital, eyes closed, forehead resting against hers. She looked so much like him. The thought hit me as I changed her diaper that first night. The shape of her chin, the curve of her lips, it was all Ryan. And for a second, it broke me. Because I couldn't erase him. He was in her DNA. In her face. In the blood that ran through her tiny body. But he didn't own her. He never would. That same week, Ryan filed for joint custody. He did it through the courts, quietly, strategically. I saw it coming. Olivia warned me after the birth certificate was submitted. He had the right, biologically. But he hadn't earned it emotionally. Or legally. He requested weekly visits. He claimed he wanted to be part of her life. That he had made mistakes. That he had grown. But the documents told a different story. He didn't mention the emotional abandonment. He didn't reference the forged financial records. He didn't acknowledge the voice recordings, or the absence, or the fact that I gave birth alone. To the court, he was playing the role of the reformed man. But I had spent the past 8 months preparing for this moment. Olivia responded swiftly. We submitted a 72-page affidavit, documenting every act of negligence, every cruel withdrawal of support, every missed appointment. Attached were screenshots of his lies, evidence of financial fraud, and a timeline so airtight it would take a miracle to punch through. And still, he pushed. He sent a letter. A personal one. Delivered to my building by courier. No signature. No love. Just 2 typed pages. He wrote about how he regretted hurting me. About how he didn't know what to do when he found out I was pregnant. About how Tiffany had left him after the truth came out. He said he'd been lonely, broken, and confused. That he wasn't the same man anymore. He ended it with, I want to be a father. I want to be part of her life. Please don't punish her for my mistakes. I folded the letter slowly and set it on the table. And I stared at it for a long, long time. He wanted forgiveness. Not for me. But for himself. He wanted to ease the guilt in his chest, not the weight on mine. He wasn't asking to parent. He was asking to rebuild himself, through her. That night, as Aurora lay sleeping, I sat beside her crib and whispered softly. You will never be a second chance for a man who threw away his first. The next morning, Olivia filed a restraining petition against unsupervised visitation. Aurora was barely a week old. She didn't need confusion. She didn't need chaos. She needed safety. And I would give her that, even if it meant spending the rest of my life defending her from the man who helped create her. Because I wasn't afraid of Ryan anymore. Not of his lawyers. Not of his charm. Not of his money. I had already lost everything once, and I had built it back, stronger, fiercer, and more beautiful than he could ever imagine. And now, I had Aurora. He could come with court papers and polished lies. But I had truth. And a daughter. And I wasn't going to lose either. Aurora was 2 months old when the final custody hearing date was set. By then, she had developed a quiet little sigh that she made when falling asleep, like she was releasing all the weight of the world from her tiny lungs. I would hold her against my chest, feeling the rise and fall of her breath, thinking how strange it was to love someone so fiercely when they had no idea what you were protecting them from. She didn't know about the battle happening just outside her nursery. Didn't know her father was trying to claw his way back into a story he walked out of. Didn't know that I had been forced to document every bottle I fed her, every diaper change, every midnight wake-up, just to prove I was the one who stayed. The one who mattered. Ryan's legal team had changed tactics. They no longer tried to paint me unstable. That narrative had failed miserably. Instead, they played the reformed man card. They submitted evidence of counseling sessions he'd begun attending. Showed bank transfers to a trust fund he created in Aurora's name. Claimed he'd stepped away from the company to focus on becoming a father. It looked good on paper. It sounded like redemption. But I knew better. He wasn't trying to become a father. He was trying to look like one. There's a difference. Still, it was working, at least on the surface. The judge had agreed to allow one supervised visit before the final hearing. 1 hour. Controlled setting. A neutral third-party supervisor. I didn't want it to happen. But Olivia explained that refusing would look worse than agreeing. So I agreed. The visit was scheduled for a quiet Saturday morning at a children's resource center. Neutral walls. Cameras. No contact unless I allowed it. I brought Aurora in a soft pink onesie, her eyes wide and curious, her tiny hands curled into fists like she was already preparing to take on the world. And then, he walked in. Ryan. The first time he'd seen her. He stopped in the doorway, his breath catching just enough to betray the image he was trying to hold. His hands twitched at his sides. His voice trembled when he said her name. Aurora. She stared at him. Silent. Blank. She didn't cry. But she didn't smile either. I didn't hand her to him. I sat across the room, nursing her bottle, letting him look, but not touch. He didn't deserve that yet. He talked to her like a stranger testing the waters. You look like your mom, he said softly. I didn't respond. He kept speaking. Talking about how he had made mistakes. How he had been scared. How he missed us. I nearly laughed. There was no us. There was only me. And her. He asked if he could hold her. I said no. He didn't argue. Not this time. He watched her for the rest of the hour. Eyes rimmed with guilt, or maybe just regret. Maybe he was seeing it now, what he had thrown away. Maybe he had convinced himself that she would fix him. That she would heal something inside of him. But Aurora wasn't his redemption story. She was mine. After the visit, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel sad. I felt resolved. Because I had seen what I needed to see. He didn't show up for her. He showed up for himself. And that's why, on the day of the final hearing, I didn't walk into court hoping for mercy. I walked in ready to end it. The courtroom was fuller this time. Media interest had grown quietly, and though no cameras were allowed, I saw the curious glances, the note-taking in the back. Ryan sat at his table in a gray suit, expression flat, eyes unreadable. But this time, I brought Aurora. The judge didn't require it. But I had the legal right. And I wanted him to see who this was really about. She was nestled in a carrier strapped to my chest, peacefully asleep. I took the stand. And for the last time, I told my truth. About the abandonment. About the silence. About giving birth alone. About the fake companies, the fraud, the manipulation. About rebuilding my life from scratch while he posed for photo ops with another woman. And when I was done, I said the one thing I had never said to him directly, not in texts, not in messages, not even in court. I don't hate you, Ryan. He blinked. I continued. I just don't respect the man you chose to be. And I will never allow my daughter to grow up thinking that kind of man is someone she should love without question. Silence fell. And then, the judge gave the final ruling. Full legal and physical custody awarded to me. No visitation unless requested and approved when Aurora reaches age 5. All prior contact must be court-sanctioned. The room didn't cheer. There was no gavel slam. Just a sentence, a few pages of paper, and a man slowly realizing he had lost everything, not because I took it from him, but because he gave it away. He left the courtroom without a word. I didn't watch him go. I looked down at Aurora. She was awake now, blinking up at the lights. No idea what had just happened. But I leaned down and kissed her forehead. It's over, I whispered. You're safe now. And for the first time in a year. I finally was too. 7 months had passed. 7 months since the judge read out the words I will never forget, granting me full custody of Aurora and shutting the door on a man who once believed he could abandon me and still come back as her father. I had walked out of that courthouse a different woman than the one who entered. Not a survivor. Not a victim. But a builder. A mother. A woman reborn. Aurora was almost 9 months old now. Her hair had started growing in soft curls. Her laugh was the kind that made your heart catch, big, unfiltered bursts of joy that came from deep in her belly. She had her father's eyes, but they were softer now. Calmer. Full of light that never existed in him. We had settled into a life of our own. Small, simple, but beautiful. Our mornings began with lullabies and fruit puree, sometimes a little spilled coffee on my work laptop because she was fascinated by the keys. I had moved into a 2-bedroom condo just outside the city. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours. Every picture on the walls, every pillow on the couch, every color on the curtains, all chosen by me. No more pretending. No more walking on eggshells in a designer house that never felt like home. And ash and light. My design studio had become something more than a business. It was a beacon. Clients kept coming, many of them women who had left controlling partners, mothers building new careers, widows rediscovering themselves through art. We designed brand kits, websites, books, even therapy office spaces. I built an all-women team, not as a political move, but as a promise, no one here would be silenced again. I didn't speak about Ryan publicly. There was no need. He'd done enough damage to himself. His tech empire had collapsed within months of our final hearing. Investors pulled out, articles were published, more women came forward, quiet whispers of NDAs, red flags ignored, toxic meetings behind closed doors. Tiffany vanished from the headlines, and the story that once painted Ryan as the brilliant innovator turned into a cautionary tale. Sometimes, people asked me, did you ever want to destroy him? And I'd smile, gently. I didn't need to. He did it all on his own. What they didn't see, what no one saw, were the nights I sat beside Aurora's crib, just watching her breathe. There were moments, small and quiet, where the weight of what I had survived washed over me. Not in pain, but in awe. Awe that I made it through. That I protected her. That I protected me. You see, revenge isn't always loud. It isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes, it's peace. Sometimes, it's silence. Sometimes, it's the joy of a mother watching her daughter sleep, knowing no one will ever hurt her the way she was hurt. Ryan never asked to see Aurora again. Not once. I think he knew. I think something inside him, pride, shame, maybe even guilt, knew he had lost the right. And I didn't chase after that closure. Because I didn't need it. I had already built mine. Now, I'm 32. A single mother. A business owner. And, for the first time in my life, completely whole. Aurora doesn't know the story yet. One day she will. One day I'll sit her down, maybe on a rainy night, and I'll tell her everything. I'll tell her how strong she made me. How she saved me without even knowing it. How she was born from heartbreak, but raised in power. I'll tell her what love should look like. What it should never look like. And she'll grow up knowing that her mother didn't just survive. She won. If you enjoyed Hailey Scott's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon to get more jaw-dropping, emotional, and inspiring stories like this one. And tell us in the comments, what did you think of Hailey's journey?